The Galactic Council convened on their gleaming central station, a structure orbiting a dying star. Alien representatives from countless worlds gathered, each claiming to wield superior intellect and power. On the agenda was Earth, the small, unremarkable planet dismissed as primitive and barren by cursory scans. Reports claimed humans had achieved minimal technological progress, and their planet was deemed unworthy of investment or conquest. Kavries, a Zaldorian scientist with iridescent scales and piercing violet eyes, spoke disdainfully as holographic images of Earth rotated above the council chamber. Earth is barren on the surface, its resources negligible. The creatures inhabiting it are resilient, yes, but unrefined. A waste of galactic resources. The council murmured their agreement. Yet, on the edge of the chamber, a lone human ambassador, Evelyn Harris, stood quietly. Dressed in simple diplomatic attire, her demeanor was calm yet intense. She raised her hand, an unusual gesture in this advanced assembly. "Ambassador Harris, do you wish to address the council?" Kavries sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice steady. "Your assessment is incomplete. You've only seen Earth's surface. What lies beneath tells an entirely different story." The room erupted into skeptical laughter. A distant starship captain muttered, "Humans always exaggerate their importance." Kavries motioned for Evelyn to continue, a mocking grin spreading across his face. "Allow me to take you beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively." Evelyn continued. Her words were measured, laced with an undertone of mystery. "Grant me the opportunity to show you what you've missed." Intrigued by her confidence, the council voted to send a small exploratory team to Earth, with Kavries reluctantly leading the mission. Evelyn's cryptic promise lingered in their minds as their ship departed, bound for a planet they had long underestimated. The journey to Earth was swift, the council's flagship cutting through hyperspace with precision. As they descended into Earth's atmosphere, Kavries and his team surveyed its seemingly barren wastelands, oceans, and bustling cities. Evelyn greeted them at a nondescript entry point, an unassuming cavern hidden in a dense forest. "This way," she said, gesturing toward the darkness. "What could this primitive planet possibly hide in its caves?" Kavries scoffed, but he followed. As they descended, the temperature dropped, and the walls glistened with minerals. The team soon arrived at a vast underground expanse, illuminated by bioluminescent crystals and strange mechanical constructs humming softly. Massive cities sprawled beneath the surface, powered by geothermal energy and shielded from cosmic detection. Advanced laboratories, intricate transportation networks, and a thriving population flourished, far surpassing what existed above ground. Kavries froze, his arrogance cracking. This is impossible," he stammered. Evelyn allowed herself a faint smile. "You saw only what we wanted you to see." The team's disbelief turned to unease. They realized Earth wasn't merely a planet of primitive humans. It was a fortress, hiding technological marvels designed to protect against galactic threats. The implications sent ripples of doubt through their ranks. "You've underestimated us for too long," Evelyn said, her voice echoing through the cavern. "Now you'll learn the cost of such hubris." The council's exploratory team had barely begun to process the scope of what lay beneath Earth's surface. Kavries, still reeling, clutched a scanning device, his violet eyes darting between the intricate designs of subterranean structures. The walls glimmered with owls that his instruments couldn't identify, their patterns pulsating softly like a living heartbeat. "What is this technology?" Kavries muttered, his voice betraying a mix of awe and frustration. Evelyn led the group deeper into the labyrinth of underground tunnels, her steps steady, her expression unyielding. "This is Earth's true face, hidden in plain sight. We learned long ago that survival often depends on what you don't show." Kavries sneered, regaining some of his composure. "You're hiding because you're weak. If your species were truly powerful, you'd have no need for secrecy." Evelyn stopped abruptly, turning to face him. "Weak?" she repeated, her voice calm but sharp. "We learned from centuries of conflict, betrayal, and survival. We adapted. Hiding wasn't weakness, it was strategy. We knew the galaxy wouldn't come to us with open arms. So we prepared. As they rounded a corner, the cavern opened into a colossal chamber. At its center stood a shimmering energy core, its light cascading across walls etched with ancient symbols. The core's power hummed so intensely that the air itself seemed alive. Around it, humans in sleek, futuristic suits moved with precision, monitoring readings and adjusting controls. Kavri stepped closer, his scanner in hand, only for it to malfunction as it neared the core. He cursed under his breath. This energy source, it's unlike anything in the known galaxy. What is it? Evelyn smirked. It's what you'd call ingenuity. A blend of science, resourcefulness, and necessity. When the surface became vulnerable, we turned inward, to the earth, to ourselves. And we built what we needed to thrive. One of the council's scientists, a spindly creature with glowing tendrils, examined the core from a distance. This could power an entire armada, they whispered, or destroy one. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared, and red lights flashed throughout the chamber. Evelyn's calm demeanor shifted, her eyes narrowing. They'd found us, she said grimly. Who? Kavri's demanded, though the fear in his voice made it clear he already knew. The Coalition, Evelyn replied. A faction far less diplomatic than your council. They'd been hunting us for years. It seems they finally tracked our decoys. A holographic map materialized in the air, displaying dozens of enemy ships descending toward Earth. Evelyn's team moved quickly, preparing defenses. She turned to the council team, her voice commanding. You wanted to see what we're capable of. Stick around. You might learn something. Kavri's hesitated, torn between his pride and his curiosity. You expect to hold off a fleet with this underground refuge? Evelyn shot him a piercing look. We don't just plan to hold them off. We plan to make them regret ever coming here. Within minutes, Earth's hidden defenses came to life. Towers disguised as natural formations on the surface erupted with energy, firing beams into the sky. Drones emerged from concealed hangars, swarming into the atmosphere like a flock of mechanical predators. The cavern shook as Earth's subterranean forces deployed, sending waves of advanced weaponry and vehicles toward the surface. Kavri's and his team watched in stunned silence as the human forces mobilized with precision. Evelyn approached a nearby console, activating a series of holographic displays. This isn't our first encounter with the Coalition, she said. But today, they'll learn that Earth doesn't just survive. We fight back. The tension in the room was palpable as the battle above began. Explosions lit up the holographic map, and the faint rumble of distant impacts reverberated through the cavern. The council team exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they had grossly underestimated not only Earth's capabilities, but its resolve. As the initial waves of the Coalition fleet were neutralized, Kavri's found himself drawn to the intensity of the humans' efforts. They were relentless, resourceful, and fiercely united. For the first time, he began to understand why Evelyn had spoken with such quiet confidence. You're not what I expected, Kavri's admitted, his voice low. Evelyn glanced at him, her expression softening slightly. And you've only seen the beginning. The Coalition's assault intensified as more of their warships descended through Earth's atmosphere. Their fleet, a vast and ominous assembly of sleek, black vessels bristling with advanced weaponry, surrounded the planet like a predator encircling its prey. Inside the subterranean command chamber, the tension was palpable, but Evelyn and her team moved with calculated precision. Kavri stood at the edge of the central console, his eyes glued to the holographic battle map. The Coalition's forces were unlike anything he had ever seen, ruthless, efficient, and seemingly unstoppable. Yet, to his growing astonishment, Earth's hidden defenses were holding their ground. How are you managing this? He demanded, his voice tinged with disbelief. Evelyn didn't look up from her console. By turning their strengths into weaknesses. They rely on brute force and intimidation. We rely on adaptability and outthinking our enemies. The battle raged on. Coalition dreadnoughts unleashed devastating energy blasts, scorching the skies and carving deep craters into the planet's surface. But Earth's defenses retaliated with surgical precision. Automated drones swarmed the enemy fleet, targeting weak points in their armor. Surface-to-air missile batteries, disguised as mountains, unleashed barrages that tore through the coalition's ranks. In the control room, Lieutenant Maddox, a seasoned tactician with a sharp wit, pointed to a formation of coalition ships on the display. "They're attempting to flank our southern defenses," he warned. Evelyn nodded. "Redirect units from Sector 12 to intercept. And deploy the EMP drones. Let's see how they fare without their precious targeting systems." Cavries watched as the humans executed their counterattack with unnerving efficiency. The EMP drones, small but lethal, darted into the coalition formation and released powerful electromagnetic pulses. The enemy ships faltered, their weapons falling silent as their systems short-circuited. Within moments, Earth's forces capitalized on the chaos, obliterating the vulnerable vessels. Despite their successes, the strain on Earth's defenders was evident. The holographic display showed growing casualties, and the cavern trembled with each impact above. Cavries turned to Evelyn, his skepticism giving way to concern. "Your defenses are impressive, but they won't hold forever. The coalition's numbers are overwhelming." Evelyn's eyes darkened. "We're not trying to outlast them. We're preparing for a decisive strike." She gestured to a secondary display, revealing a massive underground structure hidden deep beneath the surface. It was a weapon, one unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Towering and enigmatic, it pulsed with the same bioluminescent energy as the core cavities had seen earlier. "What is that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Genesis Array," Evelyn replied. "A last resort. It harnesses the planet's geothermal energy to unleash a pulse strong enough to neutralize an entire fleet." Cavries' eyes widened. "You mean to use it now? That could devastate the entire region." Evelyn met his gaze, her expression steely. "If we don't, the coalition will destroy us anyway. We didn't build this weapon to conquer. We built it to survive." Before Cavries could respond, alarms blared again. The coalition had breached a critical defense line, and their ground forces were deploying. Evelyn clenched her fists, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Prepare the Genesis Array. Begin evacuation protocols for nearby sectors." The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Technicians worked frantically to activate the weapon, while soldiers armed themselves for a last-ditch defense. Cavries hesitated, torn between his disdain for the humans' audacity and a growing respect for their resolve. Suddenly, a deafening explosion shook the cavern. The coalition had targeted the entrance to the underground city, and their troops were advancing. Evelyn turned to her team, her voice calm but firm. "Hold the line. Give the array the time it needs." Cavries stepped forward, surprising even himself. "I'll help," he said, his tone resolute. Evelyn raised an eyebrow but didn't question him. "Good. Follow Maddox's lead. And don't get in the way." As the human and council forces joined to repel the invaders, the battle reached a fever pitch. Explosions lit up the tunnels, and the clash of weapons echoed through the cavern. Despite the overwhelming odds, the defenders fought with unyielding determination, their unity and ingenuity keeping the coalition at bay. The minutes stretched into an eternity as the Genesis Array neared activation. Evelyn stood at the control console, her gaze fixed on the countdown. Every second felt like a lifetime, but she knew that survival often required walking the razor's edge of risk and sacrifice. And Earth was prepared to do whatever it took. The countdown for the Genesis Array ticked closer to zero as the defenders braced for the inevitable clash that would decide Earth's fate. Coalition ground forces surged into the cavern, their cold, mechanical armor glinting ominously in the light of the bioluminescent core. Evelyn stood firm at the command console, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around her. "Maddox, pull back to the inner perimeter," she ordered. "Buy me 2 more minutes. That's all we need." Lieutenant Maddox's response came through the comms, resolute. "You'll get your 2 minutes, Commander. But don't make us wait longer than that." Cavries found himself on the front lines, wielding an unfamiliar human weapon. The weight of the rifle felt foreign in his hands, but he had little time to reflect. Coalition soldiers advanced with calculated precision, their plasma rifles cutting through the defenders' hastily constructed barricades. Around him, humans fought with a ferocity that left him stunned. They weren't just resisting, they were adapting mid-battle, exploiting every weakness in the enemy's tactics. A soldier beside him, a young woman with a makeshift bandage around her arm, grinned as she tossed an explosive charge toward an advancing coalition unit. "Welcome to Earth," she quipped as the blast sent their enemies sprawling. Cavries couldn't help but marvel. These humans weren't the feeble primitives the galaxy had dismissed. They were cunning, resilient, and above all, fiercely united. Back at the control console, Evelyn monitored the Genesis array's activation sequence. The cavern shook violently as a direct hit from the Coalition fleet above caused part of the ceiling to collapse. Dust and debris rained down, and for a moment, the control room plunged into chaos. "Array status?" Evelyn barked. A technician coughed through the dust, his voice strained. 85% charged, Commander. Another 30 seconds. Evelyn's grip on the console tightened. "We don't have 30 seconds," she muttered under her breath. The Coalition forces pushed further into the cavern, their numbers overwhelming. Maddox's perimeter crumbled, and the defenders were forced to retreat toward the core chamber. The Coalition soldiers, sensing victory, pressed their advantage. Cavries stumbled back toward Evelyn, his weapon nearly depleted. "We're out of time," he shouted. Evelyn's jaw clenched. "Not yet." She activated the comms. "All units fall back to the core. Prepare for full deployment of the array." As the defenders regrouped around the core, the Coalition forces poured into the chamber, their weapons trained on the humans. A tense silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the hum of the Genesis array, now fully charged. The Coalition commander, a towering figure encased in advanced battle armor, stepped forward. His voice boomed, amplified by his suit. "Surrender, humans. Your defiance ends here." Evelyn stepped forward, unarmed but unyielding. "You made one fatal mistake," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. The commander tilted his head, his tone mocking. "And what mistake is that?" Evelyn's lips curled into a cold smile. "You underestimated us." With a single command, she activated the Genesis array. The core flared to life, its light blinding as it unleashed a pulse of energy that radiated outward in a cascade of shimmering waves. The Coalition soldiers froze, their systems overloaded by the pulse. One by one, their weapons, armor, and ships shut down, rendered inert by the overwhelming surge. The cavern fell silent as the last Coalition soldier collapsed to the ground, his armor sparking faintly. Above ground, the Coalition fleet drifted lifelessly in orbit, their once imposing vessels reduced to harmless hulks. The humans stood in stunned silence, the weight of their victory sinking in. Evelyn lowered her hand, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Cavries approached her, his expression unreadable. "You've won," he said quietly. "But at what cost?" Evelyn turned to him, her gaze steady. "The cost of survival. The cost of showing the galaxy that Earth isn't a footnote in their grand narrative. We didn't want this fight, but we finished it." Around them, the defenders began to cheer, their voices echoing through the cavern. The celebration was subdued, tinged with the weight of loss, but it was victory nonetheless. As the humans worked to secure the battlefield, Cavries watched them with newfound respect. They weren't just survivors, they were something far more formidable. Evelyn looked toward the core, its light dimming as the energy dissipated. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "The galaxy will remember what happened here. And they'll know that Earth isn't just another planet. It's a force to be reckoned with." Above, the first rays of dawn broke through the dust-choked sky, illuminating a world that had faced its darkest hour, and emerged unbroken.